Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Pieri. I'm the digital fashion director of Harper's Bazaar, and I'm here with Sami Miro, the gorgeous Sami Miro, who started, obviously, Sami Miro Vintage, a brand that we all know and love. And in honor of Earth Day yesterday, we're going to talk about sustainability. How are you?
Hi, I'm so well. It's such a pleasure to meet you
You
virtually.
too. I know. We actually have never met before, so this will be our first time chatting virtually here. And are you coming to us from a beautiful closet in LA?
I'm coming to you from my office. Yes.
Awesome. With all those amazing, amazing clothes, I think we all kind of want to go see what's behind you. But let's start talking. So, you launched your brand 5 years ago, which probably sounds crazy at this point. What, and the conversation around sustainability during that time has obviously changed and grown and totally shifted so many times. What has been the difference for you from when you started and how people perceived eco fashion versus now?
So much has changed. When I started SMV in 2016, I was one of the very, very, very tiny handfuls of brands who really cared about the environment.
Hmm.
And uh, now it's amazing because the world knows how important it is and how that the fashion industry has affected in so many negative ways the environment. And it's one of those things that's, it's amazing that all of these brands know that they now have to change their supply chain, change their business in order to, you know, be better.
Hmm.
And it's really nice that that is happening. And I'm also really happy that I do get recognized for the fact that this is part of the foundation of my business and our core values. And so I think it's a really beautiful thing.
And do you think that the customer is more, I guess, educated now about even what that word means, sustainable fashion?
I think yes and no. There's a lot of room for education. And I
Hmm.
think that that's what we are putting a lot of focus on this year is really teaching people ways in which they can do better when it comes to fashion and just in general. And I think that there still is a lot of room for growth. For example, Stacey, for example, um, office life. I posted a video a few months back. I think it was like June of last year, July of last year, and I kind of broke down and explained what makes what the process is and why fashion is so horrible for the environment.
Hmm.
And even follow me were shocked and had no
Wow,
idea that that it affected the planet so much.
hmm,
So a lot of educating that still needs to happen.
for sure. And thank you for doing it. It's amazing. And obviously, you've grown so, so much over these last few years. But you've never obviously gotten rid of the core ethos of the brand and you upcycle and use dead stock. Tell me how you've been able to maintain that as you've grown. Obviously, I think that that's probably been the hardest part.
Yeah, that is a big challenge that we have been facing in these last 6 months or so. The business has, when I started Sami Miro Vintage, it was really up. It was really about my one of ones, which are the ones behind me. So it would source vintage from all over the world, rework it, and put my signature on it.
Hmm.
Uh, Now we are creating collections. So that's what you see on Revolve and Forward. And that has been a really interesting challenge of the way that we have to transition from, with upcycled fabrics, for example, you only have so much of that. And luckily for us, for one of our really big, most popular products, which are the products in our baby rib fabric, like the asymmetric t-shirt and the dress,
Hmm.
uh, those we were lucky enough to get thousands and thousands of yard of dead stock
Awesome.
fabric,
Hmm.
but we're at the point where we're nearing the end. And so we are figuring out different ways of maintaining sustainability and the same quality. And so we're working with, there are some amazing local manufacturers
Hmm.
who work with the best quality, the cleanest fabrics that
Right.
are sustainable, like hemp, or there's a variety of them out there. And it's been a really educating and cool process to now have to veer into a whole nother area, and I'm still too, so it's really awesome.
Right. Because I that's actually something I've never thought of. I sort of use the term dead stock fabric pretty regularly, but you're not just like give me whatever fabric you have left over. You actually
No,
need to research and find these fabrics that would be up to your standards. So not only does it have to be up to your standards, it has to be enough of it, and that's amazing. That's really super impressive. Um, and obviously you had a core brand around loving vintage and shopping vintage before you launched your brand, which I would assume is kind of how you started. You loved it and wanted to share it with other people. When did you first kind of get into living sustainably and really shopping, which we know we all care about shopping sustainably?
well, so I'm from San Francisco, which is definitely about the environment, and we recycle and we do reuse things over and over again, so we never have to throw them away.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so I was really lucky just to be raised in that environment and to be aware of being conscious since I was a little girl.
Yeah.
So for me, that was just a natural thing that I would knew that I had to incorporate into my brand, because that's part of me, and I want, and my Sami Miro vintage is an extension of who I am. So the values are extremely important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I started getting into vintage when I was around 14 years old, and I would find like the really cool it brands that were way too, that I could not afford at all. And I
Mm-hmm.
would find the vintage, like super ripped up, discolored, tattered version, which back then it was not cool at all to be walking into school wearing like something with holes in it. Now it's the ever. But
Totally.
I would find those for like $5 or something and wear it to school, and it gave me a boost of confidence while I
Mm-hmm.
was a super shy girl. And from then, I realized that when I wore that vintage t-shirt that had holes in it that everyone looked down on, it I was like, wait a second. I'm the only person in the world wearing this shirt that looks exactly like this, that has
Mm-hmm.
coloration in the exact same places as this. And that just gave me a huge boost of confidence and become to find myself really. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just seems like such a silly thing, but
Not at
I
all.
it really helped me develop into um, a woman who like gets who she is.
Mm-hmm. And really it's sort of the process of finding your style. And so I mean, I talk to women all day, and so many women struggle with finding that well into their 30s. And
Right.
I do think a lot of it does come from a sense of inner knowing. So to be able to find that through fashion from such a young age, I think is really amazing. And that is part of the thrill of, I think, searching vintage, because you're you're relying fully on your own like intuition and instincts of what you love, because there's no like display really showing you like you're this is what you're supposed to wear this season. So I think that that's amazing. What are some of your like star finds, like the things that you still can't believe that you scored and will never get rid of?
You know, the way that I look at vintage, I think is different than most people, because I will find like one of my favorite things is like finding like the ugliest 80s prom dress or something that people would walk into a vintage store and it would be something that they would flip to their friend and laugh at.
Yeah.
But I see in those pieces because I know immediately when I see a piece like that how I can rework it and
Mm-hmm.
turn it into the sickest dress. So those are my absolute favorite things to find. And I'm not, of course, I love vintage luxury brands, but because I see the beauty in like a random ugly thing,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that those aren't necessarily my favorite. Of course, I love vintage Chanel, and of course, I love vintage Dior and Fendi and Monogram and Gucci and all of that. But because those are kind of like easier for everyone to find, I like to
Yeah,
find the stuff and rework it.
I love that. And when did you kind of learn to sew and really like delve in, and how did you know how to do all of that?
I actually don't sew.
No?
No, that is not what I do at all. I
I thought when you were reworking when you were young, you were like in there.
Oh no, I would do it was, I mean, I would cut everything up
Yeah,
in things and like all of these crazy places and completely like deconstruct a t-shirt and then like do weird things, but it
that's
would
a full talent. You don't have to know how to sew. That is a whole thing.
my way of doing things. I mean, I didn't come from like a fashion background or anything. In fact, a part of what made me happy. And so I just kind of like my whole business is I do it my own way. I
Hmm.
design my way. I look at fashion in my own way, and I'm inspired by different things that aren't necessarily the norm.
I love that. Um, and outside of your beautiful brand, do you have any sustainable brands that you are drawn to that you do think are worth investing in that you kind of love?
Yeah, the sustainable industry is, I think, growing a lot, and it started off as, you could only get eco-friendly, like hemp looking, like
Hmm.
very like granola looking type of thing. So I love seeing how these brands are developing and becoming more fashion forward, where when you look at the garment, you don't know that it's sustainable.
Right.
So I love that, what I've done at SMV. But brands that I love, I mean, all vintage stores, of course. I
Hmm.
think Still is awesome for resale. Parade, I think, is doing an awesome job, and Aurora James as
Hmm.
well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so there are quite a few, and I like to see ones all the time.
Amazing. And this is sort of the dark side, but when it comes to greenwashing and seeing, I'm sure because you're so knowledgeable about the industry and what it takes to really commit to creating eco fashion, when you do kind of see that greenwashing or recognize it happening, like what does that make you think or feel? Like how can people kind of pay attention and make sure that they're trying to shop sensibly and responsibly, and you know they're being marketed to? How do you kind of see that whole side of things?
Well, I think that the industry, it doesn't have massive standards for
Hmm.
ability. It's just become like a marketing word.
Right.
What makes it sustainable? And so I think that I'm extremely genuine. The brand is genuine, authentic,
Hmm.
and we share what we are doing that makes it sustainable. And our focus also in this year is to really be extremely transparent, because I'm so proud of every step that we take that makes
Hmm.
us the way we are. So I think that when a brand is kind of using something, especially that's close to my heart, uh, and just trying to use it as like a marketing term to get away with things, it's the opposite of helping the planet,
Yeah,
So I'm not really cool with that line. No one likes that. Uh,
totally.
but yeah, I think if it is super challenging, especially when you are a brand that is not sustainable and
Hmm.
you're trying way. Most of it is stems from your. Okay, let me give you an example. So if I am buying there's a specific fabric that I want to find,
Hmm.
and then presents me with two options. One of them is not eco-friendly, and it's $5 a yard, and the eco-friendly one is $15 a yard.
Yeah.
For me, because I am the way I am, there's no question. Of course, I'm gonna pay. $15 a yard over five.
Right.
But that's because that's how I run my business.
Hmm.
Um, for a big company, and you're not that, it's probably possible for you to go with a $15 a yard one.
Hmm.
Uh, because that's affects your margin extraordinarily. So I think that is a huge challenge that I'm sure a lot of big brands who are trying to make that transition have to deal with.
Yeah. And I do think that that, again, goes back on the consumer in a lot of ways to know that find things you love, know that you might have to, like, if you're in a position to shop, that you may have to pay a fair price for something. Like, there's a reason that skirts should not cost $15, not the price of a yard of fabric. So I think that that really does go back on to people to really know that you don't need 10 skirts. You should get one skirt that you really love.
Right.
Um, can you tell me a few more outside of fashion too of your kind of full lifestyle, all in, how to live sustainably for people who really are kind of maybe intimidated by where to start? Like, where do you even
Yeah.
go from here?
So many. I mean, one thing that I definitely never do is no sleep water bottles. Like,
Hmm.
not allowed in my house, in my car. I will judge you if you are my friend drinking a single. There's so many kids out there and fun colors. Get those, and
Totally.
also to drink more water, I think. Um, then there's also just water usage in the shower. When I'm like washing my hair and shampooing and conditioning, and even like washing my body, when I'm not actually needing the water, I turn it off every single time.
Amazing.
But too, obviously recycling and composting and uh, what else? I have a Tesla, so I don't drive gas cars, all
Hmm.
electric. I think that's a good start.
Try not to fly private as much as possible.
Really, that's not my problem.
It's really tough. But those are the big ones. Those are
Yeah.
like, that's like when you see your favorite celebrity being like, you really need to not use plastic straws. And then they get on their PJ. You're like,
Yeah.
guys, we see you. We totally see you. And it is. I think it's fully a lifestyle, and I think that that's what people need to understand, that it's something that you have to like wake up with every day and be aware and think about what you're buying. Even the products that you're using in the shower, like I'm sure that you aren't out there buying plastic shampoo bottles that you know are going to go away in 3 months. Well, go away from your shower, but stay forever
Yeah,
in a
absolutely.
landfill. Totally.
Yeah, it's shocking when you really look at these beauty products out there, especially hair products. It's so crazy. We think about water bottles, but we're not really thinking beauty products and how those are also
Yeah,
in the change and the development in that department.
totally. Those are all like such important things, and um, I think it's amazing that once you shift your consciousness to be thinking about it, you see it everywhere. Like
Yeah,
you don't have to be told anymore. You're like, oh, why would I buy that? If you stick to the grocery store on the outside, then ideally you're just like picking up vegetables and fruits and you eat that and it goes away. And if you stay in the
right.
middle, then everything is packaged. So it also is good for your health because if you're eating everything kind of organic and good for you from the outside aisles that aren't packaged and aren't processed, we are the earth, right? We're all like the same, we're from the same thing. So if you take care of yourself, then you have such an awareness of taking care of the earth. And I think that it's beautiful that your brand is dedicated to that.
Thank you. And that is a really great point. The supermarket portion. If you have a farmer's and shop there instead of the grocery.
Totally. Especially now that it's like getting nice out. You guys, obviously in LA have enjoyed this weather for all year, but it was about 30 degrees in New York in the last couple of days. So we can hit up farmers markets again. Um, And also, buying what you love and keeping it forever is obviously the most sustainable option. So you are making those pieces, which I think is the way to do it. Once you find something that you love and you're going to wear it forever and, want your kids to have it, that's really the trick, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Consumption is a huge part of it, overconsumption. Uh, so yeah, I mean, buy the things that you love. Don't buy something because you think you're gonna wear it out to this one party and then throw it away.
Totally. And who, if you had to pick maybe a couple of kind of vintage style icons, who are your go-tos? Anyone?
Actual, like, old people from the past.
Actual people from the past.
Uh,
90s, 80s, 70s, it can be anywhere in there.
yeah, I love like David Bowie. Uh, ooh,
That's
I'm
a good
ready for
one. I threw you a curveball.
that. Bowie is incredible. Uh, what are some of your favorites?
I mean, I always like to look at I'm like Gwyneth Paltrow in the 90s, mostly like in her films and stuff. I love like those really like slim silhouettes, like maxi skirts. Like I feel like anything in there, I always kind of return to. Um,
Hmm.
I I'm like a Bianca Jagger. I like really like sleek, clean design, and I feel like women in the 70s and 90s in particular really embody that in like a way that's like very purist. I'm also a Carolyn Bessette Kennedy. I love her style.
Yeah, that's nice. That's
Yeah.
very nice. I'm like a groovy 60s uh style all the way through the
San
80s.
Francisco.
So we love. And I mean, I think every decade has really unique, whether it's like the pattern on a garment, the floral pattern, or the actual material. That's another thing that's so special about vintage is the construction and the construction as well as the fabric are two things that just they don't exist anymore. And
Hmm.
so the of the clothing that was made back in the day was just better. That's why this jacket, is from 40 years ago and it looks
It's
brand new.
amazing. Totally.
And and someone who works with me, Janine, she brought this up. So interesting when what I think around what makes something vintage is about 20 years
Hmm.
old. And so when we think about 20 years from today, what will be vintage? It, it'll just spreads because it's just all garbage.
Totally.
There'd be a demand for that, but the demand for our vintage 20 years from now is going to be an even higher demand, and the prices of that is increase. So that's just something that I actually never even thought about. That was so interesting, but
Yeah,
if you,
that's amazing.
that will last as well for you. We
Yeah, I
have
love that.
beautiful construction.
Totally. And that I think is what you were saying about, finding those designer pieces is always amazing. But I agree, anytime I found just like, I'll search like oversized trench coat or something on eBay and it'll be a brand I'd never heard of. And then you get it and you're like, this is insanely good.
I do that too. That's one of my biggest searches, like extra large leather.
Yeah, me too. I have like three of them and they were like $20 each. That's really the
Yeah,
best. The eBay secrets. I've
right.
never been like super into getting into like the stores. I guess I'm just like a digital person, but I I'm like love an eBay, like a deep dive. Somebody like
Oh,
random in Iowa selling something and you're like, this is a handmade sweater and it's so good.
yeah, that's the best. That's
I
the
love
cool thing.
that.
Like you're in charge of your own. No one's telling you what vintage thing to buy, uh, and you can find the biggest gem from a random state that you've never been to or a random country
Hmm.
uh, in Europe or Asia uh, and just find the coolest things that you would never have access to in real life.
Yeah, I love that. Well, keep doing what you're doing. It was so nice to meet you. And thank you for teaching all of us a little bit more about how to live better.
My pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you too.
You too. Happy Earth Day.
Happy.
Bye.
Bye.